Well, the Houston Astros look like they're back on top, and the wild card race remains wild as ever. This is a Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to a Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover. Every week, we get together to talk about the state of baseball, not just in the state of Arizona, but in the state of our mind, especially as we are down the stretch of the pennant run of the 2023 season. I am one of your hosts. My name is Paul Francis Sullivan. You can call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now. And this is my fifth full season here at the Locked On Podcast Network. You follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully with Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And once a week, my guest host is right over there. Introduce yourself to the masses.
Millard Thomas, host of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account. Look up Locked On Diamondbacks both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And please hit subscribe on the Locked On Diamondbacks YouTube channel because it's currently showing off a little chest hair for the ladies. Oh, I think you're on mute, sir. I think you're on mute.
Get muted. There you go. There you go. Sorry about that. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You know, just a week ago, a week ago, I was saying one thing about the American League. I said it's a complete toss-up. Every team is, just is who's going to get hot at the right time. Anyone could win it. And it looked like some teams may be able to fall out of it. It was all a lot of craziness. And then the Houston Astros just said, stop. Just stop right now. And the Astros are on an absolute rampage. And the last couple of days, Jose Altuve has hit 5 home runs in the last 2 days. And the Rangers bullpen has given up more than 20 runs in the month of September. It's September 5th. Okay? You do the math about how horrible that is. And the Astros, by winning, by the way, 14-1 tonight. 14-1. The Rangers let up 14 runs tonight. They let up 13 runs the night before. The Rangers have let up, in must-win games, a grand total of 27 runs in 2 games. Okay? That now, if you're, I don't know if you're using your sleeper app, but don't bet on Ranger pitchers these days. Bet on Astros batters when they're going up against this, and it's just absolutely absurd how the Rangers have just been absolutely trounced. And with that, and the fact that the Mariners lost a game to the Reds in the bottom of the 9th in a wild back-and-forth game, in a game where Julio Rodriguez hit 2 home runs, but it didn't matter because the Cincinnati Reds came back to win that. With that, the Astros have moved all the way to first place. And they're not going to catch Baltimore, but they're in first place. There's about 24 games to go. Altuve is on an absolute tear, and we may just find ourselves with the Astros walking into their 3rd straight World Series by the way they're playing.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, if the Astros made it to the World Series, but I don't know if I'm ready to crown them division winners just yet, just because after these last two games, of course, phenomenal stuff by the Astros, but they are coming off a sweep against the New York Yankees. So they're now 2-3 in the month of September. So I don't want to act like they're the hottest team in baseball, because basically you look at the top three in the AL West over the last 10 games, those three teams collectively are 500 each of those teams. So I think when you look at that division, these final 3 weeks, I think you can really make the case for any of them. The Rangers were probably the best AL West team the first 3.5 months. Then the Mariners really caught fire in the month of August. Now, all of a sudden, it seems like it's the Astros' time to get hot. And would anyone be surprised at all if the Astros took over this division? No, because it seems like every September, October, it's the Houston Astros time, and they just automatically get up for the postseason. But I don't want to automatically crown them the champions. I would have done that the last few years, but considering how the Mariners have looked in the month of August post All-Star break, how the Rangers have looked the whole season prior to the month of August, I still think this division is anybody's to take right now.
Now, yes, the Astros were swept by the New York Yankees, who, by the way, have dusted themselves off, and they've got back to 500. You notice that?
Wow, impressive.
They're 69-69.
Good job. Last place 500 team. Good job.
Nice. But hey, I mean, look, it's obviously not a great year for the Yankees, but if they look like they were on pace to possibly lose 90 games at one point, so the fact that they swept the Houston Astros is a positive thing, but you got to give the Astros credit then, because they had that kick to the shins, and then they responded by blowing the doors off the dump in Texas for the first two games. And lest we forget, I mean, you go back to August 8th. Max Scherzer won a game against the Oakland A's in Oakland. With that, the Rangers were 22 games above 500. And since then, let's see, which were they? They were 68-46 then, and they have won 8 games since then. And I mean, they've been an absolute. They were up 3.5 games in the division at that point. And hold on, I went baseballreference.com, the single greatest website in history planet Earth. They were only 2 games behind Baltimore for the best record in the American League. And since then, they're 8-16.
Texas is.
Yes. And did I say Houston? I meant to say Texas. And that is an absolute free fall. And not only that, let's put another thing in perspective. We're recording this. It's in the evening of the 5th of September when you and I are recording this. Toronto is playing Oakland, the worst team in baseball. And as of this recording, there's no score. If Toronto wins, Toronto will then leapfrog Texas. Texas would be out of the playoff. They would not be a wild card team. If Toronto defeats Oakland tonight, Texas will be on the outside looking in with roughly 24 games to play and a bullpen that is in absolute shambles right now. So that's what we're looking at. The Everest that Toronto has to climb is Oakland, and who can play you tough, but still, that team has 96 losses at this point. So I don't think it looks. I'm actually impressed by how the Astros have responded, because they went into Texas after getting their butts handed to them by New York. And that it was the Rangers who were salivating at the thought of, hey, we can push the Astros out of the playoff picture altogether if we beat the tar out of them. And then this is humiliating. This is the sort of thing that people lose their jobs over.
Yeah, and for Texas, I mean, I would feel pretty bad, because I know Bryce Patrick, he likes to he gets real sad boyish when it comes to the Texas Rangers, and he definitely doesn't want to see the other two teams take over the AL West. But I did not know that if they get a little cold here, that the Toronto Blue Jays were going to leapfrog the Texas Rangers, just because I felt so good about the Rangers the whole season. And
Yeah.
maybe we need to do a little alignment readjustment when it comes to the wild card, because the Rangers at 76 wins, like you said, could be out the postseason. But if they were in the National League, they would have the top wild card spot right now in the NL. So absolutely insane. But the Rangers haven't even been like that awful post All-Star break. Like, we say free falling, but like in July they were 11-13.
They
August,
went they were on a bad losing. They've gone on a couple very bad losing streaks, though. I mean, like, I'm sorry. I mean, their bullpen has absolutely imploded at this point. You know, I mean, like, I get what you're saying, but I'm gonna push back a little bit. You know, they had an 8-game losing streak between August 16th and August 25th. I mean, that's a brutal run to have in a tight race.
That's tough. But you still finished the month like 3 games above 500. So I think it was probably more of the fact that the other teams maybe around you got hot, because the 8-game losing streak is tough, but it's not like you were bad in the month of August. You still left that month with a positive record. It's just the fact that a team like the Mariners, at the time you're going on that 8-game losing streak, they're going on like an 8-game winning streak.
Right.
Team like the Astros. So it's like the Rangers, I think, aren't even playing that bad of baseball. Like, yeah, they go on these losing streaks. They have certain parts of their team imploding, but I think it's more the fact that the teams around them are elevating as the Rangers starting to hit like a little bit of a scuffle. But I still would take this Rangers team probably over of the NL wildcard teams that I just mentioned. Like, I still feel good about this Rangers team on paper, and I think it would be pretty disheartening if this team ended up missing the postseason.
Are you struggling to close deals? Cold outreach is wasting the time of both the buyer and the seller at every stage, especially when sellers are using shallow and outdated data. Your organization can overcome these challenges with technology that translates comprehensive, high-quality buyer data into real-time insights. These deeper insights empower sales reps and teams to adopt the habits of top performers, which leads to better outcomes, like more pipeline, higher win rates, and larger deals. We call this deep sales, and we've built the first deep sales platform with the next generation of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day free trial at linkedin.com/lockedon. That's linkedin.com/lockedon for a 60-day free trial. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar today. Just go to linkedin.com/lockedon to get started on what? LinkedIn Sales Navigator. All right, we are going to talk a little bit about the fact that we're here doing a Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover. Again, as we record this particular episode, it's the 4th inning, and the Rocks are over the D-backs right now. Hey, the Rays walked off the Red Sox in extra innings on a 3-run home run by, is it Brandon Lowe or Brandon Lau? We'll never know. We'll never know. The Red Sox season is over. We all know that. Yeah. I mean, come on. With stop.
4.5. 4.5.
No, 4.5. But they have to leap both Toronto and or Texas and Houston. You know. And by the way, when you have a lead in extra innings, by the way, rewinding the clock, getting swept by Toronto in Fenway still has been the nail in the coffin of this team. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Hey, let's just give some credit where credit is due. The Encarnacion Strand gets the walk-off hit in the come-from-behind game as the Reds top the Seattle Mariners.
I thought that was like a new weed or something. I didn't know what that was.
Hey, look, this is not a sponsor. Also, give some credit to the Miami Marlins, who doubled up the LA Dodgers 6-3. And the Marlins, they're now on the outside looking in by half a game, but they're still in it. They're still in it. San Francisco Just a couple of terrible calls went against the Giants, but still, they let up way too many runs. And the Giants, look at this is it's the wrong time to have a 5-game losing streak. There's never the right time to have a 5-game losing streak, but when you have 4 teams that went into Labor Day Monday tied for one spot, that's when you have to go on a winning streak. It would behoove Arizona to win because that would keep them tied with Cincy. If they lose, then they would fall behind Miami. It's still tight, and the Giants still have talent, but they can't slide away too far. But I feel, look at the Marlins win over Los Angeles was a very important win for the Marlins to keep. When you look at the schedule and you see LA is coming to town, you're thinking, oh boy, that's not going to be an easy task. Yarbrough got the loss, and the Marlins got a couple of back-to-back home runs. De La Cruz, Jazz Chisholm Jr., who is a much better actor in that video game ad than Derek Jeter is.
Okay.
He is. I'm sorry. I'm convinced I was take 98 for Jeter. Say, just call me the captain. Cut. Okay, Derek, can you turn to the camera? But Jazz Chisholm went places as an actor. He kind of sits back and he goes, I think do I know you? I recognize your voice. It's like, look at some athletes can act, and maybe Jazz Chisholm Jr. Let me put it this way: he's making the old man proud. For Jazz Chisholm Sr. But the Marlins doubled them up 6-3, which brings us to the topic of the LA Dodgers.
Ooh.
The Braves are probably going to have the best record in the National League. They're playing at an unbelievable clip. They're going to be setting offensive records. I think they're a cinch to win 100 games. LA is going to finish ahead of Milwaukee. Milwaukee won again, and their magic number is down to 22 to clinch the division. LA is up 13.5 games, so they're going to win the division. So it's not really a question of is LA going to make it? But I talked yesterday a little bit about Julio Urias. I'm done talking about him. He's gone. Good riddance. Now let's talk about just the baseball fact of that, because Kershaw is their top starter. And he's having a good season.
Yeah. Lance
Lynn turned out to be a nice pickup from Chicago, as he's kind of found his groove. After that, Bobby Miller?
Yeah,
pitched very well the other day. Bobby Miller should be the guy who you're thinking is a possible number 4, maybe pitching in relief in the division series. Bobby Miller at this point is their number 3 starter. And then when you start talking, because Gratterall and who else is hurt? There's a bunch of people who are
Gonsolin.
hurt. They're talking about Emmett Sheehan on the depth chart on ESPN. When you remove Julio Urias, the depth chart is Clayton Kershaw. Then their number 2 starter is Lance Lynn, who had that in the pool. Their number 3 starter is Bobby Miller.
Oof.
Their number 4 starter is Emmett Sheehan. And the number 5 starter is the person who gets a trivia question right here at Locked On MLB. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. And if you get the trivia question right, you too can be a pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers in the postseason. I mean, I'm sorry. They've got some young pitchers on the team, and they got some people who they could bring up and maybe do an opener situation. But this is a team that's supposed to be thinking about winning the World Series. And we're talking Bobby Miller and Emmett Sheehan as their 3rd and 4th starters.
And I don't even want to put blame on the Dodgers, because I think this is a team that's usually progressive and proactive when you get to the offseason and trade deadline. But it's just been an unfortunate case of injuries and some other off-the-field issues because, of course, Julio, and then you got the Gonsolins who's been hurt. Don't forget Walker Buehler has not been there the entire season. Kershaw, he's only going to make like 24, 25 starts because of injuries this year. Dustin May is out again, like you mentioned. Like, yeah, Lance Lynn is all of a sudden the second, not because of his talent, even though he's kind of had, a little bit of resurgence since joining LA, but he's the number two, just virtue of they don't have enough healthy bodies. And when you look at this Dodgers team, compare this team to the past few years, this is probably the most susceptible team that we've seen the Dodgers have entering the postseason in quite some time because of those question marks you have in the rotation. And even the lineup entering this season, I did have a little bit of concern with. Of course, you still got MVPs like Mookie, Freddie, and Will Smith. But I thought there was if Muncy didn't have a bounce back year, I just thought maybe they were a little bit top heavy, but Muncy's having a solid year. Still got James Outman. But when I look at this Dodgers team right now on paper, they're still going to be, after the Braves, as good as any team in the National League because you're going to have those stars in the lineup. Like you said, it's still going to have Kershaw starting game one for you. Do you want a 35-year-old Kershaw starting game one? I don't know. That's another question for another day. But this Dodgers team, I think when you get to the postseason, I think this is going to be the first year. Maybe it's always been the case, but I don't think any team is going to fear the Dodgers when you get to the postseason, knowing on the other side, after Clayton Kershaw, it's a big drop-off in that rotation. Even their bullpen has some question marks as well.
By the way, I mentioned the trivia question with great joy. I can announce that I put this out there, and it's been out there for a few days now. The trivia question that nobody got for a while, which was, when was the last time the person who led the league in stolen bases in the American League faced off against the person who led the league in the National League in the World Series, where both stolen base kings faced off in the World Series? And the answer was 1938. You had to go all the way back to 1938, and good job, Court Stell, I hope you're pronouncing it right, Frank Crosetti of the Yankees, Stan Hack of the Cubs. And I had to look that up because I was sure that it was going to be, one of the years that the A's went to the World Series with Ricky Henderson there. And then I was like, oh, maybe it was when Ricky Henderson was on the Blue Jays. But there was a bunch of years where, Ricky led the league in stolen bases, and Vince Coleman, and there were some years where Willie Mays led the league. Like every year there's a block, Lou Brock, and all these people. The stolen bases didn't line up in the World Series. You have to go all the way back to 1938 to see the last time that the leaders of stolen bases met in the World Series. And so good job, Court Stell, for getting that one. Now, let's just go right. I'm going to go right now. I'm going to baseballreference.com, the single greatest website in the history of the planet Earth. Who do you think is leading the league in stolen bases as of right now?
That a question for me?
Yeah.
Is it Acuna?
That hold on a second. I just got it closed up on me. Acuna is indeed leading the league in stolen bases. So, and we all know the Braves have as good a shot as any to go to the World Series. So the question is, who is leading the league in the American League?
Oh, I think I know. Can I answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Esteury Ruiz?
Yeah, with his 56.
Yeah.
So there's no way that this year is going to be the year where we have the two stolen base kings of the World Series, because the A's are not playing in the World Series. And so, no, we got to wait. Got to wait one more year. One more year.
Ruiz is like 200 average, 650 OPS, but man, that dude can run some bases. But I don't know if he could do much outside of that, unfortunately. I want to talk to our listeners about this little app that I use with the football season around the corner and the MLB playoffs here. Why not download FanDuel and make a little money? Because get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get 200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's right. Just put $5 down and you could get $100 off. Now's the best time to join FanDuel. The app is super easy to use and can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. Best believe I use the same game parlay feature when the D-backs are playing and Zach Gallen's on the mound. Give me Gallen over 5Ks. Carroll, RBI double, and D-backs to win. Second half hasn't been hitting at much, but I'm still making some money here and there. So visit FanDuel.com/lockdown and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, here's the deal. The wild card race is going to be absolutely insane,
Nutty.
absolutely nutty, and we're gonna, and then we're look at there's some we're seeing some of the teams you expected to win start to come through, but I'm telling you, this is a situation where, like, let's say if you're a National League wild card team, okay,
Like the
if you're a National League wild card team, then you have to really be you have to be putting the aft thrusters in. You have to just make everything, you have to go all at it and just completely do your best to get into the wild card by any way, stretch, or form. And here's why. Let's say you win that wild card series and you find yourself, you get to the next round and you wind up playing the Dodgers. Now, look, you got to favor the Dodgers no matter what, because they're going to be a 90-some-odd win team and blah, blah, blah. And did I mention blah, blah, blah? However, they're a beatable team now. You suddenly take a good long look at this team and you say, if you can get past Clayton Kershaw, who I'm a big fan of Clayton Kershaw, but let's be kind, he has had a checkered postseason past. And then after that, you're looking at Lance Lynn and the 14th caller, and suddenly going up against a 90 to 100 win team becomes a winnable situation. Now, is any team going to defeat the Atlanta Braves? Probably not. But nobody picked the NLCS to be the Phillies versus the Padres last year. What I'm saying is that the turmoil in the Los Angeles Dodgers pitching staff has suddenly made the idea of getting a National League wildcard spot a little more attractive. Now, the team that's really, and did I mention really benefits, is the Milwaukee Brewers. Because the Brewers are probably going to win the division. And they're going to have Burns and Peralta, a solid starting rotation. If they can get past the wild card round and then face the LA Dodgers, suddenly the Brewers starting rotation, you've got to put up against Los Angeles's, and favorably. Now, LA still has Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, this fantastic lineup. But the one way that can keep LA out of the league championship series would be suddenly a team outpitches them. And if any team can outpitch them, it's Milwaukee. So this is significant. This is absolutely significant. And we're probably going to have a Braves Astros World Series rematch. No offense, Orioles or Rays or so many other teams in the American League, but the Astros just look really good right now.
Yeah, Brewers could beat the Dodgers in a series, but it won't mean anything to me because the Brewers are boof. I don't care how many series they win. Once they face the Atlanta Braves, they will be going home because the Brewers will be a sexy dark horse team that people like to pick because of the rotation, like you just mentioned, Sully baseball. But one thing that they cannot do is score enough runs to win, and this is not even the elite Corbin Burns that we've seen in years past where he's been a Cy Young Award winner. This has not been the elite Freddie Peralta. Both of them are still studs. Both of them are still very good. But if they're not that tier one level pitcher with their offense the way it is, the Brewers to me are just why the Chicago White Sox have been the last few years. A really good regular season team, a sexy team, and a fun team to pick once you get to the postseason that always disappoints you and rips your heart out. This NL wildcard race, it's basically 5 teams for 2 spots, right? Because I think the Phillies are pretty locked in. And with the D-backs playing the Chicago Cubs 7 more times in the next 3 weeks, you can't lock in the Chicago Cubs either. So this is going to be crazy. And I want to really ask you of how aggressive is too aggressive? Because I look at a team like the D-backs, right? You can't make any more trades at this point. There's no more waiver wire trade deadline in Major League Baseball, right? You could go out there and sign someone, but who's out there on the waiver wire market? There's not another LA Angels cropping half your roster, at this point in the season. So if you're the D-backs or any team this wild card race, if you have a guy in the minor league system who's in AA or AAA, 22 years old, crushing it in the minor leagues, a top 20 prospect, and can be called up right now, is this the time to do it? Because a team like the D-backs, you got Jordan Lawler, one of the best prospects in baseball, 21 years old, but he just got called to AAA like a month ago. Like, would it be too soon? Is that the kind of move that hurts your development? Because we just saw the LA Angels, right? They called up their first rounder from like last season to start the season. And then they called up like their first rounder that they just drafted this season to already like play on the major league level. So that could be a sign of being too aggressive and, maybe not thinking about the long term. Like, what's the perfect balance here of thinking short term, trying to get my young guys in a big pressurized playoff environment down the stretch of this regular season? Or should I have more of that long term view and say, you know what, let me not waste rookie eligibility on a season where I might make the postseason?
All right. Well, look at
there's a little bit of a question. What do you think?
Well, I think you got to stand pat with what you got right now. There's nothing. I mean, the only thing you do is to call up someone from the farm.
That's what I'm saying. If you call up a top prospect and it's like Ella De La Cruz those first 2 weeks, is that
you at some point you got to think at this point you have all your best ones up there. If there is someone who's still floating around there, then go for it. I know at this point I just think you've got the team. You got the team that you got, and I would. I just would, I think you got to run with what you got right now. There's only 22 some odd games left. I mean, how many great contributions are you going to get out of 22 games?
Because sometimes I see with the D-backs, they kind of ride like this hot hand thing where they just call up and send down guys. So like if you have a spot on your roster where you don't feel solidified, where you have like a third or fourth outfielder, and it's like, you know what, this guy isn't working right now, let me call up someone who's like the same level of player who is hot and producing right now in the minor leagues, and then you just keep trying to ride that hot hand toward the end of the season. I don't mind that as a technique. Maybe you don't want to call up a top prospect, but there's probably some dudes who are like 25, 26 who spent a few years in the minor leagues that are probably itching to get a little chance and opportunity.
Fair enough. I don't know the deep. I don't know like who they have that'll make a huge impact. Sure. I mean, a win here or a win there could be the difference between playing golf and not. So, I just don't know how much wiggle room and how much finagling you can actually do. But hey, if you got somebody that can make a big difference, then fine.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you lose rookie eligibility playing in the postseason? I don't know if that counts.
No, that doesn't. Because remember, Randy Arozarena played in the postseason in both 2019 and 2020, won the Rookie of the Year in 2021.
Okay, there we go. That answers the question then.
Again, I did that from memory. Hey, let's do a trivia question here. I'm thinking a lot about postseason and teams that came so close to winning. And the Cleveland Indians, and that's what they were called back then, came as close as you can get to winning the World Series in 1997, which would have changed the fortune and the perception of the team and maybe even sports in Cleveland altogether had they held on to that. How close were they to winning? Well, in Game 7 of the World Series, they had the lead in the 9th inning of Game 7, and they had the go-ahead run on base in the 10th and the 11th inning before losing in the bottom of the 11th to the Marlins. Now, the World Series MVP that year was Livan Hernandez. He should not have been the World Series MVP. He was okay, but he wasn't great. The World Series MVP should have been Moises Alou, if you look at the stats. But what Cleveland Indian legend would have been the World Series MVP with his 2 homers, 367 average, 10 runs batted in, an OPS of 1,006. What beloved Cleveland star would have been the World Series MVP in 1997 if they had got those final outs?
Big Papi.
He was
twin.
He was a twin, I think. He wasn't even a twin then yet. So put right down here at on the YouTube channel or at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Hey, Millard Thomas, where can people listen to your show?
Please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account. Look up Locked On Diamondbacks on both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. Streaming on all platforms, Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. And please don't forget to catch every D-backs pitch on their hometown broadcast when you download the Sirius XM app and search up Diamondbacks.
And you can follow us at Locked On MP Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully, but Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the wild card, the resurgence of the Astros, and the confusion that is the Dodgers, and the possible shuffling of the deck in Arizona. This has been the Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully, and let's fist pump for another week.